Hello, welcome to Oye Dimelo Cinema Club. I'll be leading tonight's talk about Amadeus, the 1984 Milos Forman movie, Oscar winner. Can't wait to start talking about it. With me tonight, we have JP, we also have Michaela, we have Steve, and we have Jason. So, like I said, it's a 1984 movie, and the what we've been doing this time around for movies is we had been doing that the movie we picked had to be somehow connected to the previous movie, and whether it's actor, director, writer, we threw that out. We threw it completely out, and we couldn't have any connections whatsoever to the previous movie. And Amadeus has always been on my radar, but I've never watched it. And I think part of it is because it's like a 3 hour movie, but I decided to pick it. So that's my reasoning to pick the movie. I have never watched it, but I was very happy with the pick. So for me, before I started that, I just want to say we're going to be looking at, we'll be doing initial thoughts. Then I want to talk about cinematography and the editing of the movie, overall movie, and how they play with the sound in that, as well as like, does anyone have any favorite characters, favorite scenes? And then if anyone has any other things they might want to talk about, we'll get to that as well. And then just end with some final thoughts, whether or not we would recommend this movie to friends, foes, phonemies, etc., etc. All right. So to start, for initial thoughts, I'd like to hear dun 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 dun. Rock me Amadeus. What were your initial thoughts of the movie?
Amadeus. I'm not gonna lie. This is gonna sound kind of weird because Amadeus is one of those movies that like is referenced and is like kind of it's kind of like cinephiles like top 10 or top hundreds. A lot of cinephiles top 10, top hundreds. And I've seen this movie like parodied and satired in so many like things. So that's literally how I was introduced to this movie. And so when I before I even watched it, I'm not gonna lie, I think I set my expectations too high. So my first initial thoughts were like, wow, like it's a great film. Don't get me wrong, it's a great film. But for some reason, I don't think it lived up to the hype that I was kind of expecting or heard people, who really, really like this fucking movie so much. Because I'm not even gonna lie, I didn't really like most of the performances, even though I think there's at least two Oscar winning performances in this film. And I think the film itself also won Best Picture. But like I definitely didn't see it. I was like, oh, it's great. The story I think makes up for my underwhelming response to it. But yeah, overall the look of it is great. The performances, I had a few like not a big fan of that, but like for me it was the story. Really dig the story. Um, that's my kind of
Okay,
underwhelming initial thoughts on that.
sounds good. How about Michaela? What were your initial thoughts?
First off, I was really surprised to find out that this was made in '84. I didn't realize for some odd reason, like I know that this was like a movie my mom really really liked, so I just kind of assumed it came out a lot later. Because like I remember her like talking about it when I was like 6, so that's like late '90s, early 2000s. Anyways, so it looks really good for an '84 movie, especially a historical drama. Like I have to give props where props is due. I think the reason why JP didn't like one of the Oscar-winning performances is because maybe they're too similar. Just saying.
Oh, that you're saying JP is similar to the one of the characters in the movie?
Yeah, you don't hear
Okay,
it.
I do. I do now. I do now.
So I'm wondering
All
if that's
right.
why he
Steve,
had a. issue.
What about you? Initial
Wait,
thoughts?
before we go ahead, like
Oh,
I'm not gonna lie, I had no idea this was 1984. So I'm right now I'm absolutely shocked that this movie is older than Back to the Future. Like, what the fuck?
okay. All right. We'll get to that because I do want to hear why that's shocking to you. But before we get into that, yeah, Steve, what are your initial thoughts?
My initial thoughts. So I have to say it will be I guess my second initial thoughts of this movie, because I did watch this movie, or I would say I got forced to watch this movie when I was younger, and I took some band class or something, and literally the only film they played was this one.
Oh
But when
wow.
I watched it, I was a teenager, like a very young teenager. And literally, what I remember the most out of this film was all the again, I was a teenager. So what I
The boobies?
remember the most was the lust part, like when the women
Yeah.
were naked and he was like under the table, like chasing and stuff. Like that's literally what I remember the most. Now, as a grown up, rewatching the movie, my initial thoughts was like JP, I was like getting hyped. But then when I actually clicked play to watch the movie, I was like, oh my God, this is like Titanic. This is going to be so long. No. And legit, that was my initial thoughts, just because I was not expecting it to be so long. I'm like, oh. But at the same time, I was like, man, they did this guy dirty. But that's more my final thought. I'll leave that for the air later. My
Okay.
initial thoughts, I was like, this is too long. How am I gonna survive this? And that's my initial thoughts.
Sounds good. How about you, Jason?
Let me unmute myself. Oh, I'm good. Well, second time seeing the film. First time I saw it is when I was working through the AFI 100 list, and so this movie always intrigued me because of the box cover. I used to always see the box cover in the video store as a kid, and almost every time I would just stop and sort of look at it. It's sort of intimidating. You know what I mean? Like,
Mhm.
there's a lot going on here. And I don't feel like this box cover has anything to do with the movie, like
That's the
whatsoever.
that's
I,
the mask that he wears.
yeah.
Yeah, no, I like I'm not gonna lie, I get that too. Like that's obviously like the father figure. That's like,
The
but
dog.
at the same time, I was shocked by that scene as well as like, whoa, that's the famous scene. Like it's felt so underwhelming, and the box cover makes it seem like a much more serious picture instead of a prequel to Hamilton. So that was
Oh boy.
weird.
It doesn't feel like the box cover is the film. That's what I'm saying. And
Right.
it's cool. I just never expected this movie to be in that packaging when I would always see the packaging. I had no clue what the movie could be about. Maybe some Illuminati stuff, not about Wolfgang. And honestly, I probably would have seen the movie much faster had I even known there was a movie about Mozart. You know what I mean? It's never really built that way. Like, oh, this is the Mozart movie. I
No.
kind of found it because I had to get through this list. So my second viewing of it, I just have a more profound appreciation for this movie because I've seen stuff that this movie has probably picked from, like Barry Lyndon, Stanley Kubrick type stuff. But I really think this movie does do a great job. It's one of those movies. It's not. I'll tell you what it's not. It's not one of those movies that I looked at for a second time and thought to myself like, "Oh, this is I'm getting a different experience this time around." It's the same experience. I love the experience, and it's always great to think about like, I mean, there's a lot of little textured things in this movie about their relationship and just relationships in general, and your relationship to your art, and how that impacts your life and friendship even. Like, there's a lot of different things that we can touch on this thing. But I feel like this thing holds up. I feel like this is just a great film, period. And it's always going to be a great film because it's just a well done, executed story. That's layered and just cloaked in so many things. I mean, it's cloaked as this Mozart music movie, but there's a lot going on there. And Salieri I love him. And I appreciate him. I get him.
Nice. I kind of agree with a little bit of what everyone said, but I think more with Jason. Yeah, first time watching, I didn't know what the tone of this was going to be. And again, there's been a lot of uh, things that have taken from this movie as well, whether music videos, especially music videos, right? And other pop culture references, which always kind of played tricks in my mind, especially before watching this movie, of what the tone of the movie would be. And so I really went into this movie without watching the trailer beforehand or whatever. And yeah, I was very pleasantly surprised. It is really long. I wasn't expecting that. But the whole time I'm watching it, I was watching it in like a 70-inch television. So it was a pretty good experience with just raining nonstop outside as it is right now in Southern California, which is crazy. And so that added to the effect. All that was missing was the fire, but I don't know if the flute is closed or not, so it could have created billowing and I could have burned the house down, so I didn't. But what I kept thinking of was I would love to see this movie in the big screen. It just, everything looks so big and majestic. Because, I mean, it has to do with that period, kings and duchesses, everything in between, and like them at the actual theaters and all that, like concert halls, all that. I would love to see it in a big screen. Also, I know that they do some showings with an actual orchestra playing the music, playing the whole soundtrack along. So I would love to be able to catch that. Um, I was mesmerized by the amount of candles in this movie. And what I found out later, that the whole movie was made with natural lighting. Like it just completely changes because the costumes and scenery, and we'll get into that in a little bit. I was just really amazed by the whole experience, right? Of just, so I can say enough good things about the movie, and I'm sure we can nitpick here and there for certain things, but yeah. So that's kind of my initial thought is I was blown away, and I want to watch it in a big screen. And with that, let's get into cinematography. And I kind of explained this, and I want this cinematography kind of talk to be also with the kind of sound editing and editing of like transitions of scenes. Because the one of the scenes for me that really where really it is easy to pinpoint this, it's when oh crap, who was it? I think the dad. I think it's the dad. I think it's Mozart's dad is reading a letter and he like crumples it up, or one of them crumples up a letter, and all of a sudden you see a big shot of like I believe it's reindeer. If not, it's like funky deer that we don't have over here because they have the really funky antlers and stuff like that. But they're kind of in their little pack, and they get startled as you still hear the crumpling, and so the deer rush off, and then you see the regular, people in their like horses and all that, and like that kind of transition. And again, this is 1984, which I don't know why, JP hates 1984 so much. Dino came out in 1984, and hello, doing pretty good here. So
all the more reason.
exactly.
1984.
So, yeah.
You said 94.
84. No, okay. Oh, you heard 94? I'm saying 84. And policemen, hospitals, everyone mishears it. So I do normally have to change it to 84 because for whatever reason, I'm saying 84, but people hear 94. Is that not different? 1984, 1994? Am I saying the same?
You're spending a lot of time making this up.
No, that's okay. I do the same thing regarding my age too.
I'm not. I swear to God. I swear to God. It constantly happens to me. Anyway, point being, yeah. cinematography, the editing of the sounds, of crumpling of papers and going into other scenes, the fact that they used natural lighting and all those freaking candles, to me, I thought, I've this is a little bit of, I feel like, of a master class in how well you can shoot something without using CGI or without forcing something. Like, and I know now it's easier to do certain things, but it just goes to show you that you can use natural lighting, that there were a handful of actual sets that were built. Because even some of the operas that they filmed were at actual locations where Mozart would play or where there were the actual operas would be from. So yeah, those are some, specifically the crumpling of the paper is what really stuck in my mind. Are there any other cinematography things that you guys notice, or editing of in between scenes, or certain action pieces that maybe you guys noticed or really enjoyed?
For me, it's funny that you mentioned the whole fire thing, because I'm not gonna lie, I was halfway expecting there to be a fucking blaze sometime in the film. There was so much fire that I thought it was preluding to something terrible was about to happen. Like, we're gonna see his house burn or like a theater burn. So for me, the fire was, I saw it as a threat. I didn't see it as like, oh no, this is how, of course, they would live without electricity. So I feel like a dumb shit for thinking that. But for me, I actually really like the way that they shot the opera scenes, because I noticed that a lot of the shots, it almost made me feel like, oh wait, I'm in the theater. It's not like recorded Broadway shows where the camera's all up on stage and you could tell like, oh, it's obviously some crane next to the set, like hugging at the proscenium. Like, no, it almost feels like the cameraman is one with the audience, especially with that with the kind of like the secondhand theater, not the royal theater, like that. Particularly, it almost felt like, oh, we're one with the audience and we're watching the show, the same show that the audience is actually watching. So those scenes I really really dig. Just the way they set up the shots, like they of course had a few wide shots of the orchestra, the players, and whatnot. But when it came to especially when Salieri, right? That's the conductor guy who
Yeah.
basically uh, Mozart's burr. Like when he mentions like these scenes that impacted him, we're literally seeing like, oh wow, this is how it would have looked like if the audience saw it, and I really dig that.
Nice. Very cool. How about Jason? Any things in the cinematography that jumped out at you? You're on mute.
Yeah. So off the bat, I think something that sort of jumped out at me was, and I don't think this is the case, and I didn't do the research, so forgive me if I'm mistaken, but a lot of this felt like they were trying to aim toward natural lighting, and I feel like they might have like tried to do that with Stanley Kubrick. I know not all of it's natural lighting, I can tell, but it does try to. It feels like it tries to emulate that for the time period. All the candlelight and the lights being a little dimmer, like in the function rooms and stuff like that. It feels like that's the angle that they were going for. So that stuck out to me as far as like the lighting and whatnot. And I felt like this cinematography was pretty similar to Barry Lyndon,
Okay.
Kubrick. But this thing has a lot less gravitas. I kind of
Right.
like how Wolfgang is always sort of pulling from the moment because he's such a goof. You know what I mean?
Right.
Uh, yeah. I feel like the cinematography tries to ground the thing the same way that Kubrick tried to do with his similar time period film.
Right. Okay. Steve, did you notice anything in the cinematography?
For me, just to reiterate, kind of like what maybe Michaela said, her initial thoughts. what shocked me the most about the cinematography is how ahead of its time it was, because I didn't realize, because again I don't watch trailers or even look at the actual date of the movie or anything. I just watch the movie and that's it. To me, it felt more of a 90s film than an actual 80s film. So to me, that was the most shocking thing about the cinematography, in my opinion.
Okay. And Michaela, any other cinematography things you want to add, or?
I mean, it's mainly just like the coloration of the entire film is really, really strong. You know, like that's part of why it's kind of interesting that it's as old as it is, because I feel like a lot of films you see coming out of that time era, like it still has like this light graininess that's kind of coming right out of the 70s.
Right.
You know? So, well, I mean, even then, with some of the bigger films, though, you still kind of, like, it's either, like, it's faded or it's, like, over hyper colorized in a way.
Right.
And this one just managed to get such richness and tone that you just don't see, which was really nice.
Yeah. Jason, what I read was that for the scenes, I mean, it was candlelight and other stuff like that, and then they would cover the windows with some sort of diffusing paper, or I forget the actual name of it. So that's how they would get the lighting, so kind of different tricks to not get too much harsh lighting in, certain scenes. So that's that. Before we get into kind of the characters, just because I think this is in the cinematography section, JP, you said when you were comparing this to like Back to the Future or whatever, what did you have a little bit more of a specific note on that, or are you just being your own kind of Amadeus at the moment?
Nah, it has to be like I think Kayla kind of said it. Like the picture itself is very crystal clear and just so bright and colorful. And there's a lot of the use of the wides and like showing off the scenery, as opposed to like Back to the Future, where this is not dogging on Robert Zemeckis, but at some stuff looks more like stuff that you would see from like let's say a television movie, or a lot
Right.
more like close-ups. Whereas this one, like it was a grand masterpiece, and I was under the assumption that this was a '90s movie as well, because not only
Yeah.
did the picture look clear, but it looked like there was a much more like use and like detail to like how much we're gonna put in this one frame, in this one shot.
Yeah. Nice. Yeah, for me, so it was filmed in Prague, or the majority, which is where Milos is from, the director. In case you guys didn't know, that I don't know about you guys, but watching this movie, especially, I mean, we're getting out of, you know, the pandemic or COVID, but just seeing a movie to this scale, like those theater scenes, having that many extras, like having those majestic, like you said, like super wide angles, and it was to be able, like, I'm just trying to figure out, like, how to go back to that. Like, are we gonna see more movies that maybe do stuff like that, that have it lit so well that you can actually see, like, oh yeah, there's 100 people in this scene, in this dance hall. It's not just the good old camera tricks that they do, like, oh, when you're shooting it from this angle, everyone moves and stands over there, and then when we shoot it from this angle, the same people come over here. So that's something that has, watching these movies, have really started to kind of get in my mind of just like, are we going to see one of these movies again? And again, this is 80s, right? So it's before using the different, it's camera tricks, it's practical stuff, and not using, of course, computers or anything like that. And now with COVID precautions and everything, it's just kind of like, are we going to see anything like this? This magnus, this height again? And I don't know if we are. So it's definitely a movie that I think stands on its own. It's only the fourth movie to win Best Picture that also won a Tony for a stage play, because this is a stage play that was then made into the movie. But that's just a little tidbit there. So I want to go into characters, unless anyone wants to touch on JP's Back to the Future
Can I just say
comparison.
one last thing? I was so kind of disappointed that this movie did not have Falco's Rock Me Amadeus, but this fucking movie predates that as well. Like, what the fuck? The music
Yeah, that's
video looks like it was made in fucking 1875 compared to this film. What the shit?
yeah,
Where do you think
it's
they got the idea for the song, JP?
yeah. So yeah, I'm gonna start on characters, and this one goes out to JP. Okay. Um, and you can do either favorite or just what I noticed, and maybe because the last movie we watched as a group was Joker. Is it just me, or is Mozart Joker? Because he's got that very awkward laugh. Also, JP, you got the laugh on hand, right? Something like that, and it was like a nervous laugh, and he was awkward and uncomfortable, and I'm like, oh my god, Mozart is Joaquin Phoenix. He is the Joker, and a musician. And I was worried when we first started watching the movie, and they first show Mozart, and he's doing that laugh and all that, and I was just like, oh no, this is gonna be the whole movie. I'm gonna hate this movie. I'm gonna hate the character. But I think it was such a good contrast with Salieri of and they complemented themselves, and then we actually saw uh Mozart kind of struggling and just like, I think we saw him turn more human, right? I feel like it starts as Mozart kind of being untouchable and kind of just like this image of like greater, and little by little we see the human side of Mozart and the different struggles. And another little thing that I saw from looking it up, that the actor who played Mozart, Tom Hulce, I don't know how to say his last name. I was like, who the hell is that? And then I realized that he was in Animal House, and it blew my mind because I was like super impressed with with what he was doing with Mozart. And
I oh, go ahead. Sorry.
apparently, like his laugh, he said that he took it from some director he had worked with, but he has not said who it is, even till like today. That he hasn't said who he stole the laugh from. So yeah, so I just really liked at first I thought I was gonna really get annoyed by Mozart, which I did at the beginning, but towards as the movie progresses, at least for me, I really start to like feel this, this for this character, and just how, like, not traumatized, but the whole idea of the struggles that he goes through, from everyone else, and him trying to do like his art versus what other people want him to do. So
I would love to know how accurate this film was.
it's not.
Okay.
It's not like the other stuff that I did research. I try to do my due diligence, and there's like nothing that corroborates that Solari was trying to like kill Mozart or steal his stuff. So a lot of the movie is very, just like very a lot of liberties, if you will. Which I think maybe that's why it doesn't even have like based on actual events or based on a true story or anything. And even Amadeus, like he has like so many different names, Mozart, and like the German version of Amadeus, the French Amadeus, the Italian Amadeus, like So even just the names itself is just like all over the place. But apparently, Mozart did prefer, I think it was the Italian spelling of Amadeus. But yeah, but the one thing that I did see that it was an anonymous thing was the mass at the end, the Requiem mass, like that someone did anonymously pay to get that composed, and Amadeus did die before he finished writing it. But Salieri was like he had no involvement with that, and it was someone else that then it has been historically figured out who tried to purchase that, and because they wanted to write it for his daughter, but Mozart died before it got finished, and so Mozart's student finished writing that final death march, or yeah, and he had economic difficulties, Mozart did, but it didn't have to do with the fact that he was being ostracized or that he wasn't able to sell stuff. It was just money management, which they kind of showed that with him as well, that he would just spend extravagant amount of money on stuff. So he did have issues with money, and when he died, his wife did have to ask for the king or whatever for a pension. And yeah, he died at 34 or 35, I believe. So yeah, so that's a little facts. So it's the movie takes a lot of liberties, but story wise, again, I really enjoyed it. Yeah, so if you guys have favorite characters or character traits that you enjoyed, let's hear it.
You know, it's kind of crazy. Like, I know I kind of made the joke about Hamilton, but I did get a lot of Hamilton vibes off of this film. And for me, Mozart is kind of like a more likable Hamilton, and then Salieri is like a much more detestable Burr in this film. Cause, and I'm not gonna lie, I think the guy who played Salieri, he definitely he earned that Oscar win. I know I kind of riffed on it a little bit at the beginning, but he did earn it because that guy was like he was such a sly, slick, poised little narcissistic psychopath, and he plays that really well at his like prime, and then once he's in the old man makeup, he plays it really well as this man who's got nothing to lose, and he's just so full of himself that he even likes to liken himself like, oh, I'm the god of mediocrity. Like
Yeah,
I definitely loved his just grotesque and cringy sense of like entitlement and just like absolute like devious envy, to the point like he ends up blaming God and renouncing God just because someone happens to be fucking better than him. Like it's he plays it really fucking well. He really does.
I wrote that down. The patron saint of mediocrity. I was like, oh my god, that is such a brilliant line. The actor is F. Murray Abraham, and he is in the Apple TV show Mythic Quest, and he's great in that as well. So I would recommend that if people enjoy his performance, he's in that TV show. Yeah, I just want to do
Wait,
that
that's
real quick.
him?
Yeah, you know who? Yeah, he's the writer. He also plays a writer in Mythic Quest. Anyway, yeah. Anyone on the characters else wants to chime
Yeah,
in?
man. Salieri is my motherfucking guy. I'm gonna tell you something. The first time I saw this movie, well, yeah, I mean, just because I hadn't. So when I saw this,
Take a deep
movie
breath.
initially,
Take a
I'm
deep
just kind of
breath.
like formulate my thoughts on the fly. When I saw this movie initially, and I found out it was a Mozart movie, I thought it was so brilliant that they didn't tell it through the POV of Mozart. They told it through his nemesis, essentially. And I thought that was really interesting because you got to know why a bad guy is bad. You know what I mean, or what drives him. You know, if you want to consider him the bad guy, I guess. But I really like Salieri because also this was the first time I had ever saw that I can remember that I ever saw a movie that wasn't through the supposed hero's perspective. And that was like a really interesting turn. And it still works in this movie, man. Like now we see that so often in film, but this is the '80s, and that just wasn't done normally. You know what I mean? And because Salieri is this weird trickster, slickster, you know, he's the lead. So in some way, I feel like we're sort of forced to root for him a little bit. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like we sort of want Salieri to win against the guy who is deserving of it, but not necessarily deserving of it. It's deserving because it's his gift, you know, but so it's automatically deserving. But then, you know, this guy who's worked so hard for it, we want to see him get a little piece. You know what I mean? So, so I just thought it was just such a complex character. And that's why I identified and liked it because, you know, somebody wrote that thing.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to piggyback off what Jason said. I'm going to say the same thing, but specifically the older version of him. So the one that we see at the beginning and at the end. And the reason I say that is because the entire movie, I'm thinking that's Mozart.
Oh!
And that was such a twist for me. Even though I saw this movie as a teenager, but again, I don't remember much. So technically, this kind of was like my first time watching it. And to me, that was a big twist. So I loved that. I loved all of it.
Yeah. And just to really quick to add on the Jason thing, on the point of view, I was like, I hadn't even realized that it's not just the antagonist's point of view, but it's the antagonist's point of view of another person's story, right? Because you could talk about, you had Taxi Driver, we were starting to have all these movies with lead characters that weren't your heroes or weren't necessarily fresh and clean, and so we were starting to have that already in movies for a little bit, and then this one is like, let's see what this person thought of this other person, kind of. And the funny thing also when I was researching this, that Salieri was kind of obscure in his music, and then when the play came out in the '60s, I feel like the play was that because of the play and then the movie, like Salieri music started to get back into demand. So Salieri can thank this movie and the play to bring in light and bring his popularity back up. So even though it has no like actual historical kind of facts between like how they interacted, if Salieri was actually jealous of Mozart, you can say that now the Amadeus movie ended up creating more interest in his music and kind of shot him back up into a little bit more of fame than probably what he had when he was alive. Yeah, that's just another little side bit. Michaela, any character opinions?
I really liked how they wrote his wife. Just because, like, when you first see her in the movie, like, I was just like, yes, it is focused on them, but she plays so much bigger of a part in the whole thing that I didn't expect.
Yeah, absolutely.
And like, she really does hold her own against these other like forces, you know, like she stands up to her like father-in-law, like literally it's just like, no, you don't do anything, get out of my house, which I think would have been very rare in that time, you know? Like she wasn't just like it would have been so easy to just write her as an ornament. Like it would have been so easy for them to just be like, yeah, no, she's just there to be pretty and like nag on Mozart when she needs to nag on him.
Yeah, right on.
But like you can sympathize with her plight. Like it doesn't feel like she's just being the annoying wife. Like, you know?
Yeah, she was even, trying to push her husband. Kind of the whole idea, like behind a man there's a woman, or
Yeah,
I don't
behind
know.
every great man, there's a great woman.
Yeah, kind of like
Yeah.
that, right? Like in the movie version, Mozart is too proud. Oh, you want my resume? Like, want me to submit? I don't submit. I don't audition. I just get called. I just get the job. So like, yeah, like her character being like, fuck it, I'm gonna get his shit and I'm gonna go and I'm gonna get him a job because he's too stupid. It's like, yeah, she played a pretty big part in the movie that I also thought that maybe it would be a easy throwaway kind of character of just,
Yeah, and like
just the
It's so.
wife.
Oh,
also,
sorry.
well, no, and it's just like I also really like the fact that he genuinely loved her. You know,
Yeah,
like I
I was
feel like
surprised.
that's not something that they don't like they do with like edgy Oscar winning movies like this. You know, they usually make it so like they're solicitous and he plays around and she's gonna just get hurt, you know? Like they actually genuinely have like it's not a healthy relationship, but like you can
Right.
tell that they genuinely care for each other in their weird ways.
Yeah, it's so crazy too because like in her first two scenes, the movie does seem like that's how they're gonna use her as a character. So I was really shocked that they used as much of her as they did. Because they play her as like, oh, like he's being all cutesy, stupid, flirty, and shit. And then the second time we see her, it's kind of implied, oh, he had an affair with the actress, and so the actress is like, oh, you piece of shit, Wolfgang asshole. Even the wife, even Constanza using the nickname Wolfie. Like I was like, oh man, like the second scene is gonna be the last scene we're ever gonna see of her. But no, like like it's crazy because it did introduce her in like not the best of ways, but like it makes for a better moment when you realize, oh wait, no, she's a player in this piece, like she's actually a player in this piece.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I also really like the actress too. Like there's this one shot where you can just really see how young she is for all of this to be happening for her character, where she's holding her son and she's headed back because she knows that like Wolfgang needs her, like despite how like awful everything's kind of going off the track, and she just looks so tragically young in that one shot. I think that's gonna stay with me for like a good minute.
Yeah, right
Well,
on.
especially once you see his kind of health deteriorate, right? And he's just getting sicker and sicker, basically. And yeah, and so she looks like, oh wow, she looks really young, and he looks like shit.
But no,
All
like
right,
I
and
said, like she
anyone else? Hmm?
female character stands her own.
Yeah. Any other characters that people had? Nope. Okay.
I really
Uh,
like the dogs.
yeah. My aunt's dog was very confused when those dogs were barking, and then all the knocking. Ooh, my aunt's dog was just like, ooh,
Oh
ooh,
my
someone's at the
god.
door, someone's at the door. I was like, no,
It's
it's
the
in the
movie.
movie. Um, yeah. So I think that's on characters. I think we've talked enough about the different characters. Anyone else want to bring anything else that like different that we haven't talked yet about? If not, I think we'll just jump into final thoughts. Nope. All right. Cool. So yeah, for final thoughts, I guess I'll start on this one. I just really enjoyed this movie, and like I initially said, I would love to see this on a big screen, yeah, and maybe even with like a live orchestra doing the soundtrack, like apparently places are doing. Just again, it's oops, sorry. I just think everything was just done right, and so maybe I'm wrong, but what I was hearing from you guys talk about like the cinematography and lighting and all that, and how you thought it was a newer movie or whatever. I think this movie holds because they weren't doing these weird effects, which I mean, the movie itself doesn't need weird effects, but I think it's just. I was having a conversation with someone about movies nowadays just having being really dark or kind of like a blue hue or like a dark hue, especially like horror movies or thrillers. But compared to like older movies where it's just like, let's, if we're gonna make lighting choices, it's a specific lighting choices and not just we're just gonna throw this lighting or throw this edit at the end. Like just with a click of a mouse, we can dim this scene. So this just I feel this holds true to the movie because it was they tried to do everything there in the spot where they were filming, and yeah. So I would recommend this movie. I mean, pretty much anyone. I would just be like, you want to see a really dope movie? Check this out. But you need 3 hours, or you need to watch it in sections. It's really fun. I was truly tickled by the movie, especially the very first. I thought I was gonna be like, ooh, Dino picked a bad one, but I didn't. I picked a real good one. So I think I
Yes,
heard
Dino, you did a good
Jason
job.
chuckle. So, Jason, your final thoughts?
Yeah. Final thoughts are: this is a great film. It's one of the greatest American films, I would say. It deservingly has a spot on the AFI 100, and shall it remain there for many millennia to come. Yeah, I like this movie. I feel like it was groundbreaking in a few different ways. This is the kind of movie that even though it's 3 hours, I do believe it could like even hold a young student's attention. I feel like without some of the more vulgar aspects of it, and there's not many, but you know what I mean. Like this movie would play well in a school. I think it could hold school kids' attention. I really do. It's interesting. It's fun. It's insightful. It's got all the elements. Powerful music. I would recommend this to anyone too, even if I don't believe necessarily like this would be their bag of tea. Like, oh, you like Mozart, you like classical music, even if they're not into it. I'd be like, you should check it out because I do believe this movie has because it's such a good film. It's such a great story. I think it's relatable on so many different human levels. You could recommend this thing to anybody, and if they have the patience to sit through it, I think they're going to enjoy it. I mean, obviously, some people won't, but most people, I think, will find something they can identify with this thing.
Awesome. Michaela, final thoughts?
I agree. It's a beautifully well made film. It really stands out, and the story I think is genuinely ahead of its time. And it really does cover like a whole spectrum. Like I kind of wish we got into that a little bit more, like the whole idea of like this man who really like has tried to spend his entire life honing this craft just to find that someone just has it in their brain and he has to just take that. And so and like seeing that horrible progression is just like there's so many layers to this on top of that, and like they make so many interesting choices, like the acting and like the way that they tell the story, that it really just makes it very effective, and it makes it so you can really sympathize with both sides of the problem, essentially. So yeah, no, it's a good film. I don't think it's something I would suggest for like casual viewing, but it is something I probably will end up revisiting eventually.
Cool. JP?
Yoo-hoo, JP.
Maybe we
Oh
lost
yeah,
you.
my bad. So all right. So okay. Sorry. Let me get my composure because we're talking about this composer. Oh yeah,
Yeah.
I made a joke right in there, just like Mozart made works of art from his effing brain. What I have to say, yeah, this is a good film all around. I'm not gonna rescind my initial thoughts saying that there was nothing that necessarily wowed me, because I was waiting for that wow factor, and even though I didn't get it, it was the story that did hold me on. And I would definitely like. I think it's probably because this is low key a better Hamilton movie. Um, except we don't got the rapping, but we definitely have the historic inaccuracies. So yeah, I would definitely recommend it to, if you liked Hamilton, you'll definitely like this movie, even though there's no rapping whatsoever. The costumes are the same, just European, and also like what else? Um, like I know I kind of like in my initial thoughts saying that I didn't think the performances were all too stellar, but after reflecting, like I'll admit Tom Hulce does do a really good job, like as eccentric and kind of like goofy as he plays it in the beginning, right when things starts to get serious, especially when we see this Mozart's final days. You do see his vulnerability, and you see his like just absolute fear, regret, and like the fact that all of a sudden he just fucking dies. I honestly didn't expect the way that he was gonna die, the way that in the film portrays it. Like almost straight up out of the blue, he's alive, then dead, and just like most people after they're dead, he's just discarded to oblivion, and he literally is just placed into this mass grave and placed with salt, like such a fucking grand man.
It's not.
At the end
It's
of the
not salt.
day,
It's not.
what is it, like lime or
Lime.
whatever?
Yeah.
Lime, salt, all white minerals look the same to me.
Oh my god.
So would I say it's a great film? I personally don't see that. I don't see what most people see, like the greatness in it. But I do know it's a very good film, and like the length, when we kind of said it, it's 3 hours long. But I'll admit, even though I knew that the movie was long, it didn't feel long. We've seen shorter films that I fucking felt the minutes on, and this one a few times, yeah. But to be honest, like there was no scene or no act that felt like, okay, it's over saying it's fucking welcome right now. So just kill it already.
All right, JP. Let me ask you this: would you see this movie again or watch Havoc again?
Well,
That's
he's
not
already said it was a
fair.
very
I
good
didn't say
movie.
I hated the movie. I'd watch it again. What the
Okay, good.
fuck? That is such that's an unfair comparison. You gave me
Good.
PTSD of fucking Anne Hathaway right now.
So fucking bored.
All right,
B
JP.
plus, B
Hey,
plus.
hey, NJP, just know that the wow moment was inside of you the whole time. All right, Steve, have you done final thoughts?
My final thoughts will be that first, I would have wanted to see this movie with a better sound system, because the first time that I watched it when I was a teenager, I think I saw it in like a square TV with like VCR or VHS or DVD. I don't even remember. That was such a
Yeah.
long time ago. And then this time I watched it on my laptop. So I
Oh
didn't get to
no.
appreciate the sound as much as I would have if I had the theater experience, like Dino said, or a surround sound experience or something like that. What really captivated me about the film, and I'm glad that we clarified that this is not based on true events, is just, and it gives you a glimpse of just how messed up the music industry is, because
Yeah.
people are out there to get you and take advantage of you. And the thing that shocked me so much about this film is even at the end when he dies, they just throw him in a pile of other dead people. Give him like a quick blessing, throw a little powder in him, and that's it, and keep it moving. When this guy composed and dedicated his life to bring this art, you know, to the masses. So would I watch this movie again? Maybe. Is the movie a bit too long? For me, it is. Just for a person that's a little busy in this day and age. But I would definitely recommend it for people that are into classical music, are into older films, and are into little twists and turns. Because, like I said, I really thought watching this movie that old guy at the beginning was actually Mozart telling his story. And then we find out it's not him. He was dead a long time ago. So I will definitely recommend it to people that are into that. Not every single person, because if I recommend it to like one of my close homies that has nothing to do with cinema, it'll be like, bro, this is too long. I'm not watching this. So that's my final thought.
It's like 1,000 TikToks, right? I mean,
I think more.
Just look at it that way. I can't wait if someone decides to edit the movie in TikToks, just like one whole channel of Amadeus TikToks. All right, well, yeah, so that was our kind of chit chat on the 1984. Am I saying 84? 84 movie Amadeus. El Clásico. And yeah, before we go, Jason, is there a question you might have?
Yeah, thanks for asking, Dino. There was a question that I have specifically for Steve Dez. Steve, what do you got for us next week?
Next week, I don't get why you keep asking me, man, because it's not my turn. It's actually JP, aka Rock Me Amadeus' turn. But remember, we're quantum leaping from the movie, so you can't pick people that acted in this film. You can't pick the director or the year that this film was made for your next pick. So go ahead, JP.
Oh boy, oh boy, oh boy, this will not make sense when this is released 3 years later. But when we were recording this stream and review, 'tis the season, it's almost Christmas. And so, oh my gosh, we're gonna watch a Christmas animated thing. I hope you're ready. You're gonna enjoy it. Tokyo Godfathers. We're watching Tokyo Godfathers.
Okay.
Oh wow! I think I just saw that come up recently, but I have not watched it, so I'm looking forward to it.
I really wanted to watch Frosty the Snowman, but like Steve said, that if we did, he'd kill me.
Yeah, I concur with that. Since he's in Puerto Rico, I'd probably go up and murk you.
I did not
myself.
say that. I did say it for Jack Frost, but I did not say that for.
I tried to compromise with the little drummer boy.
Nice. All right. So yeah,
there you go.
Looking
So
forward
for
to it.
Michaela, for Jason, for Rock Me Amadeus, aka JP, El Dondino, and me, Steve Des TV. We'll catch you next week. Bye bye.
bye.
Oh, Amadeus.
Hey, I'm Jason Echoes, and thank you for watching the Dimelo Network. There's some videos here. Watch one of them, and then you can subscribe to the network, and you can see more good stuff.
The best
All right,
shoulder.
nice.